Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture on community newspaper. This lecture is a part of your paper on community media and society. In this module, you will understand the concept, need, status and role of community newspapers with the help of some case studies and examples. The word community gives a sense of a big family in which everyone is associated with a common thread. Though within the communities too, the members have various different issues and interests. The community newspapers bind them together by providing a platform to address all those scattered issues. It also gives an identity to the community by highlighting their names as well as concerns. However, many people are also confused that which newspapers would be called community newspaper and what are its advantages. In this module, these questions have been tried to be answered. Defining and understanding community newspapers. From the word newspaper, we understand a broadsheet or tabloid publication which carries an account of all the important local, national and international news of the day. Also, it caters to the general audiences, not to the specific audience. Thus, the issue of specific audiences do not get space in a national and regional newspaper unless it has an impact on large number of people. In such situation, if any community or group of people with common interest wishes to highlight their issues, concerns, knowledge, practices, they will have to look for alternate arrangements such as community media. This media can be radio, television, theatre, blogs and of course newspapers too. Earlier in 20th century, the community newspapers were defined as mail newspaper with a circulation of 15,000 or less. However, in today's digitally advanced world, the community newspapers cannot be defined on the basis of circulation. Rather, it should be identified and defined by its vision and mission towards a community. Jacques Lotterer, in his book Community Journalism, Relentlessly Local in 2006 defines community newspapers as a community newspaper is a publication with a circulation under 50,000, serving people who live together in a distinct geographical space with a clear local first emphasis on news, features, sports and advertising. Here the emphasis is more on the local geographical place, which means issues related to that place. He also have a more liberal definition of community newspapers as those which not just serving the communities of place but also the community of faith, ethnicity, ideas and interest. Now, here he has not only incorporated the vision and mission of a community but also gave a more importance than the geographical area. Geographical dimensions are not so important in today's digital world where communications even float in virtual dimensions. However, in case of newspapers, geographical identity applies since its reach is limited and it would be relevant only when it would cater to a particular locality. According to the definition given by UNESCO, community newspapers are defined as newspaper published by a community media organization. A community media organization is domestic, broadcasting or publishing entities generally serving the interest of a community, and community is group of people sharing common characteristics or interest. This derives that community newspapers are publications which serve the political, social and commercial interest of the community which is united with a common interest or located in a common geographical space with common demographic compositions. Just like the newspapers, the predominant medium of community newspapers is newsprint, and they are published at regular intervals like every week or every month. The main characteristics of the community newspaper are the high level of local engagement in bringing it out. This definition re-emphasizes the point that the success of a community newspaper does not lie in escalating its circulation, rather inspiring the community to actively engage in the production of the newspaper and generating a sense of ownership and belongingness among them. Community newspapers in the world. In the international arena, there are few countries where community newspapers have evolved and thrived. In the coming up sections, the status of community newspapers in these few countries have been tried to highlight it. Nowadays, it is considered that circulation of a community newspaper does not matter much. Rather, it is the mission of the newspaper that matters, and due to its mission, a newspaper is called a community newspaper. Under the new definition, the term community newspaper covers the small and mid-sized dailies, non-dailies and the ethnic newspapers. This is a large group comprising almost all the United States' 11,000 papers. According to Jock Loriter, an award-winning North Carolina community newspaper editor, in 2006, out of 9,321 newspapers in US, about 97% were considered small or community newspapers. These included weeklies, dailies, ethnic newspapers, papers devoted to religion coverage, gay and lesbian papers, and papers targeted to parents, senior citizens, military personnel, and other special interest groups. Within few years, this figure has risen and came up to 11,000 community newspapers only in USA. This shows how fast the community newspapers are thriving here. While tracing the growth of community newspapers in USA, we should also look at the community press of Philippines, as some scholars assume that first research study on community newspapers worldwide started in Philippines. With a study as early as 1967, its survey on the Philippine community press. According to a research paper titled Philippine Community Journalism Roles, Status and Prospects, published in Grassroots Editor and Community Journalism in 2015 by Opiniano et al., nearly 5 decades since the Maslach survey 1967-1971, Philippine community newspapers have grown in terms of the number of publications that are circulating. Established community newspapers such as the Sunday Punch or the Bohol Chronicle persist to this day. There are also long-running chains of community newspapers such as the Sun Star Group, which started out in Cebu province and now publishes Sun Star Community newspaper in 11 provincial cities plus a new service in Metro Manila. There are also younger chains of community newspapers in Mindanao, such as the Business Week Mindanao group of newspapers. The reach of the newspaper copies for some community newspapers is expanding. The Mindanao Gold Star Daily now covers 24 provinces, including 20 cities in Mindanao. Newer independent community newspapers are also coming up. Metro Manila's national newspapers have either bought majority shares of community newspapers as the Freeman of Cebu, which Philippine Star bought, or they have set up community newspapers part of the national media's newspaper groups as Cebu Daily, News of the Philippine Daily, Inquirer and Daily Tribune, Mindanao, Mindanao Insider of Hard Hinning Daily. Canada. According to Canadian Newspapers Association, the community newspapers touch all the key communities. There are more than 1,100 community newspapers in Canada, which has a strong readership. About 74% of adults read a community newspaper. The community newspapers are spread all over the regions with a strong readership, such as Atlantic 59%, Ontario 69%, Quebec 61%, Manitoba 77%, Saskatchewan 83%, Alberta 76%, British Columbia 80%, and Northwest Territories as Yukon, Nunavut 80%. Approximately one-third of Canadians only read a community newspaper, not other newspapers. Community newspapers in India. Community newspapers in India have been few and successful ones, even fewer. In the clutter of mainstream commercial media, there have been a few bright spots that are highlighted in the sections below. Community newspapers have been progressively moving towards digital platforms to leverage cost effectiveness and reaching out to larger audience and also heard in the corridors of power. Mahila Dakia. Community newspapers in India owes its birth to the resilience of women folk in some of the most backwards regions of the country. Very often, the attempts of the marginalized section become the more powerful medium of change. One such initiative of women collective in the villages of Uttar Pradesh can be said to be the beginning of community newspapers in India. Mahila Shikshan Kendra MSK was specifically a literacy campaign of the marginalized section in the rural areas of Uttar Pradesh. Mahila Dakia, a community newspaper, is a direct output of this initiative of MSK. The local women of Banda would contribute to the fortnightly broadsheet published by these women. This was a women's collective unparalleled in India's print media history, run by women. News gathered by women and made for the local community, which is spread to Chitrakoot and Sitapur. The contribution of Mahila Dakia was recognized when it won the prestigious Chameli Devi Award for Outstanding Journalist, which is generally given to an individual. The Mahila Dakia closed down around 2002 due to lack of funding, but it indeed led the way for a better part of the decade. Khabar Lahariya. The second wave of community newspaper in India can be considered to be the direct fallout of the Mahila Dakia experience. Nirantar, the NGO connected with the earlier initiative, launched Khabar Lahariya in 2002. a community newspaper which started publication in Chitrakoot in 2002 with an 8-member team to collect, edit and publish news that concern the marginalized sections of the society. Chitrakoot falls among the poorest 200 districts of India, and Khabar Lahariya concerned itself mostly with the issues of coals, scheduled castes and Muslim communities. In 2006, a second edition of Khabar Lahariya was launched from Banda district. A unique feature of the initiative was that it published news in Bundeli dialect which could connect with its readers. The sustenance of the paper depends on advertisements, which was agreed to by the women after deliberations. The success of Khabar Lahariya can be judged by the fact that today it boasts of a combined readership of more than 1 lakh. In 2004, it received the Chameli Devi Award for Women in Journalism, and in 2012 won the Ladli Media Award for Gender Sensitive Reporting. Today, Khabar Lahariya is flourishing on the web. It has a Facebook as well as an e-paper presence, taking its readership to all new level. Khabarlahariya.org is perhaps the only newspaper in India which has news stories published in the local dialects on the web. The case of community newspaper Namaskar is unique, which is born out of Odisha's first community radio initiative, Radio Namaskar. Namaskar was started in October 2012 as a fortnightly 16-page edition. Namaskar is a unique newspaper where no journalist or writer is involved in between, but the community itself, the content generator and its editor. Initially, news was collected through the drop boxes placed at every Gram Panchayat. Any person from the block could drop their grievances or stories, which were then collected and decided upon by a group of editors, people from the community themselves. Namaskar has turned out to be a unique idea because it has done away with the idea of reporters and truly represents the community at large. Odisha, stressed with rural newspaper, specifically in the western district, has been a tumultuous one. Several newspapers have started and closed down over the years, such as Gan Mahakhabar, Gram Vikas Samachar, Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, Gaunli Vichar and several others. Rural newspaper initiatives. Gaon Connection is another such community initiative which takes the concept of community newspaper to a whole new level. It imagines a marriage between the traditional ideas of the rural and leverages the opportunities of the new. Gaon Connection encourages rural youth to take up cudgels on behalf of the society. Its founder Nilesh Mishra is a journalist who wanted to give back to society and thought of a venture called Gaon Connection on a weekly rural newspaper reporting stories of the unheard. It was started in December 2012 with a team of 15 people, mostly comprising of local youths. The only difference Gaon Connection had with other community ventures is that it encouraged professional journalists to volunteer their services to the cause. The newspaper reaches 38 districts of UP and has a print run of 10,000. In the first year itself, Gaon Connection was recognized with the prestigious Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for reporting from the rural hinterland. Role and significance of community newspapers. According to Jerry Brown, a community without a newspaper is like a church without a pulpit or an altar. A voice which is familiar to the community is missing without a newspaper. A sense of home, continuity of concerning voices, and in broader sense an identity to the community is missing. He further says the character of a place is defined and confirmed by its newspaper, and these country cousins in the great family of the democratic press are just as essential to our way of life as their more citified media relatives. The community newspaper not only binds a community politically, economically and socially, but also gives voice to their issues and concerns. They usually perform three unique and critical roles in community: setting the agenda for public policy debate by informing citizens and public officials about important issues, encouraging regional economic commerce, fostering a sense of community by highlighting their common traits and providing them geographical identity. The relationship of the community newspaper with the community also affects the readership of the publication and its growth as well as sustainability. Many community newspapers are steeped in history and have survived because of the closeness of the relationship they have built with their communities, reflecting accurately the community's values and being unafraid to raise the community's concern. Neighborhood newspapers, an emerging concept. A new concept of neighborhood newspaper is also emerging as a step ahead of community newspapers. This concept emerged keeping in view the local and hyper-local news with a professional touch. When one side the national and regional newspapers are serving news related to national, international, state issues, the other side community newspapers serve news only related to community and that too only their concerns and issues. Thus, the local and hyper-local information area remain untouched and untapped. Such publications could also be used to cater to the advertiser who wanted to publish advertisement at cheaper rates and focus on only a small local population. Perhaps these were the conditions under which the neighborhood newspapers emerged, and some of them have started registering their presence in South India. So much so that even the Times of India group launched one such newspaper in Chennai called Times Neighborhood Adyar. After finishing this module, you must have understood the community newspapers are identified by their vision and mission as well as their geographic location. They play a great role in bringing the issues of the community on forefront and are capable of kicking a debate that and discussed around these issues. They can also influence the policy decisions on these issues. They can play a vital role in economic growth of the community by providing business and employment related informations and highlighting the local speciality like art and craft cuisines. Simultaneously, they are capable of self-sustenance due to low maintenance cost as well as capability to generate economic resources. With all these things, the community newspapers keep the community together by providing them an identity, prestige and voice, which ultimately empowers the community. For more details, please read the text of this lecture properly and attempt the questions at the end. Thank you.